Hi all, welcome to my channel. This is the second part in our Docker Swarm cluster. In the first part I showed you build two VMs in that Azure and install Docker and Docker Compose on them. In the second part I am going to show you how to install ClusterFS as a replicated volume in our environment in order to get a high availability of our stateful applications. Means stateful microservices. ClusterFS is an open source tool. We can use it as a high available storage environment. There are different architectures are available for distributed cluster volume. If you want to learn more about ClusterFS, I can give you that URL. You can go through that URL. This is the first distributed ClusterFS volume. Here there are two bricks are created, but that file one is may be stored only on brick 1 or brick 2. If any server goes wrong, that there is no data redundancy. In order to avoid that drawback, I am going to utilize that replicated ClusterFS volume. I am going to create two bricks on the two servers, and that volumes are replicated among that cluster. Means that if you create any file 1 or file 2, both are available on that both the servers. If one server goes down, in the second server, whatever that applications are utilizing that volume or those files, they can utilize that files and they can spin up that microservice on the node, and we don't see any data loss or any application down. Today I am going to install ClusterFS. How we can see that created volumes are replicated among the servers in that cluster. Let's start with installing ClusterFS on the servers, on the manager node as well as their worker node, and I can show you how that replication works, and after that we can go through that deploying applications one by one on our Docker. Now it's time to install ClusterFS. I am going to use that ClusterFS in our Docker Swarm environment because this is the scalable network file system. Deploying that containers is very fast, and we can make efficient use of that system resources. Those are all the benefits of using Docker containers. But there is a one disadvantage. If you wanted to deploy stateful applications, means Docker containers are ephemeral. Means if you restart any container, that volumes associated with particular container, they are going to lose if you reboot that containers. For that purpose, we are going to deploy that ClusterFS to our environment. We are mapping those Docker volumes to our ClusterFS. Whenever if you reboot, the data will be there in our file system, and we can mount those volumes. Not only this rebooting purpose, if you lose that volume, if you lose that VM itself, we can map the that container volumes in our whatever there in ClusterFS to if you want to deploy that using that same volume, you can have that whatever that state for that container. You can use that from that state. You can service. For that purpose, I am going to use that ClusterFS. These first we need to install all the maybe prerequisites. They're all installed by default. Maybe you can check those commands if they are already installed or not. We already installed by installing the Docker and Docker Compose. Now we need to add that ClusterFS PPA. I think 7 is that latest version. We need to add that is the easiest way to install ClusterFS to this any Linux environment, you need to add PPA. It's going to take a little bit time to install. And after adding those ClusterFS PPA to our Ubuntu server, we need to update the server again. It's completed. It's finally installed that our ClusterFS server, the two servers on the two VMs. To click on S button because it's going to use some of the space on that, our disk. The client is also it's going to install while installing the ClusterFS server on the VMs. Now you can start that ClusterFS service by using this command. After starting that cluster service, you need to enable that ClusterFS in that boot mode. Whenever you restart the server, it's going to enable. It's not going to stop that service. If you don't enable while boot mode, we need to restart it again after that server comes back online. And you can probe that server. Maybe you need to probe those node from that manager node. You can run this command, demo node, whatever that server name you provided, you can probe it. The peer probe success. Peer probe success means that ClusterFS is installed on both the servers, and whatever that any file you are going to create in that one server. Maybe we are using that manager node in order to deploy microservices using that Docker compose file. Those, if you create any folder or file in that manager node, those are going to reflect in that worker nodes. You can see it in that later. Now that ClusterFS and the Docker are installed on that server, you can initiate Docker swarm. Maybe you can initiate now or before installing that ClusterFS also you can initiate. There is nothing difference there. Docker swarm again initiate. If you want to maybe initiate Docker swarm and specific IP address, you can append. You can include that IP here. I am not going to append it. I am going to use that same IP out of that. I enabled that static IP on the both the nodes, manager and node and worker nodes. I am just going to initiate the swarm. Now that this you can see that swarm initiated. That this node is set as a manager node. If you want to add worker nodes, you have to copy this command and copy it, and you need to run this command on that worker nodes. Now it's going to add as a worker node. Now if you want to see, this is the if you are not adding that that whatever that user you are running to the Docker group, you need to include sudo for that every command. Here I have not included sudo command docker swarm initiator. Now you wanted to see what how many nodes are there in our cluster. You can simply run docker node ls. It will display this is the this one is the leader nodes, means it's a manager node. You can see this whatever that docker version currently running. This is the worker node. You can see here this is the manager. The same thing here will appear. Now that docker swarm is initiated, docker swarm cluster, and ClusterFS is installed, we need to create a some bricks on our two servers in order to have means ClusterFS works on I'm going to create a brick on the two nodes, two servers. I can call it as you need to run. I will show you how that if you create one folder or file in manager node, that's going to reflect it will create automatically on that worker node. Here this is the very important command. Here we are initiating that docker volume on the two servers. One is the manager and another one is the node one. If you wanted to have more workers or nodes, here you need to add one more here. From here onwards you need to add one more line here, like node 1 or node 2. You can maybe demo node 1, I called it as node 1, some node 2, like that. How many nodes or how many managers, depending on that, you need to modify this command. Currently we are having only one manager node and one worker node. It is fine. You can change that name, demo manager and demo node, because we are replicating that whatever that brick we created previously on the both the servers. If you want to have that maybe if you want to learn more, I ran it on worker node. Nothing, it's not going to change anything, but you can start that volume. That volume is created. You can start that volume here. Now that volume it's got started. If you want to check that sudo cluster volume info, here see here two bricks are created, only that manager and node. If we have more workers, you can see the difference here. 3, maybe if you are going to add 2 nodes, you can it will be displayed as 1 into 3 is 3. Now we need to mount this volume to the mnt folder. I am going to mount it as an mnt because it's very easy to use it. And if you want to mount it somewhere else, maybe if you want to add data disk to that VM, and you can if you can mount that cluster volume to that data disk. Maybe you can separately create a 30 GB or 40 GB data disk to that VMs, and you can mount that volume to that particular disk. That is also possible, but I am going to mount that volume to the mnt, and these commands needs to be run on the both servers. I am just unmounting the mnt and mounting our ClusterFS volume to this mnt file system on the servers. I am going to run those commands on the two servers. I will show you that if you want to see that file system df minus h, you can see we unmounted that mnt is not displayed here. after mounting it, you can see this is whatever that G, and this is the our root. It's going to mount it to the MNT folder. I will show you that after running these commands. You can have that Azure blob also as a volume to this cluster, but I'm not going to use it. It is very easy to have that same that nodes instead of having a different. You need to add this to fstorm file in that server, because whenever you are going to reboot that server, it's going to delete. We are mounting it permanently to the fs tab folder. It's not going to lose that MNT enabled that cluster volume if you reboot that server. Now go to the file system df-h. Now you can see that magic. What happened? See, our volume, that cluster fs volume is mounted to the MNT folder on that server. df-h. Here it is the volume. Now if you want to go to that cd mnt / and ls. These are simple commands. Ls means whatever that files or folders are there in that particular location. Now go to this manager node and we'll see. There is nothing is there, and I'm just going to create a folder, make a directory, sudo mkdir directory -p, maybe nextcloud. I'm going to use it nextcloud. See, ls, it's a nextcloud. Now check this on that node. See, its folder is created automatically on that worker node. There is no need to create, because in the Docker swarm, whenever you are going to deploy services, microservices, we'll call it as microservices, there is an option to target the service to a particular node, that if you are going to run that node on that manager node or worker node, most likely that databases, whatever the databases we are going to run, those needs to be targeted to that manager node. And applications means that blog, if you want to run any blog or nextcloud or any other applications, they need to be targeted to that worker node. And that is very important. That folder, if you wanted to mount that Docker inside volumes to this ClusterFS volume, those folder needs to be available on the total whatever that nodes you have in that cluster. That volume should be available on the cluster. Like that, if you create a folder on that manager node, it's going to appear in here. It's not going to it won't cause any problem, because if you create a nextcloud, you need to map that nextcloud Docker container volume to this ClusterFS volume. And if you created that volume in that manager node, that volume should be available on that worker node as well. If sometimes if any problem comes and that worker nodes, you targeted that nextcloud to that worker node and it went down, that application won't going to down, it's automatically going to up using that folder in that manager node, because that folder is available on that manager as well as the worker nodes. The data, it will going to take the data and it will automatically spins up that container in that manager node. That is the use of having ClusterFS in our environment. This is the I'm going to stop here, and next in the next episode I am going to deploy Traefik in our Docker Swarm environment. That is the main thing. First thing you need to deploy that works as a load balancer, and also it's deeply integrates with Let's Encrypt to automatically get SSL certificate for our services on that our Docker Swarm environment. Thanks for watching, and if you like that video, you can share or subscribe to my channel.